think one of the things has just been about having hard conversations at work. Too many people, including myself, have shied away from having these hard conversations. And an example could be, you giving feedback to someone who like working on an important project. Their thinking does not align with your thinking. They're going in a different direction, or it could be like a little more like, we're working on some overlapping stuff. There's like scope issues that are coming up between you and the other team. So, and I mean, it's only valid. Like, who wants to confront a colleague, give them sincere, empathetic feedback, and risk the relationship, right? But it's a skill that needs practice and a lot of effort. The outcomes can be exponentially fantastic. Like, it saves you so much heartburn, anxiety.
This ProductHooman, series, and super excited to have you on this show. How are you feeling today?
First, thanks for having me, Arnav. Pleasure to be here. I'm feeling good. Middle of the week, so excited for work and excited for this conversation.
For sure. I mean, WhatsApp seems busy in our life, so it might be a lot of things might be going on in your life as well when you are looking at behind the scenes, building WhatsApp and stuff like that. Just to begin with, can you just introduce yourself a little bit so that like a little bit of like our listeners could understand like what is your background and stuff like that. If you can go through a little bit. Sure
thing. So I'm Ankit, currently a product manager at WhatsApp, which is owned by Meta now. A product I use every day to stay connected with friends, family, and businesses. I work on the business messaging side of WhatsApp. So specifically on how we scale our business monetization efforts while protecting users from spam and low quality messaging on the platform. So that's my current role. Before Meta, I was leading product at Twilio, which is a SaaS, B2B company providing email, SMS, and other channel infrastructure for developers to build on top of. Essentially helping businesses communicate with their users across multiple channels. And sort of looking back, I've had a fuzzy career path. I started in investment banking at Credit Suisse in India. After I was 2 years, doing investment banking, but then pivoted to entrepreneurship. I worked for 3 years on my own startup in Bangalore. We were called Alien ADV, which was a platform for discovering and booking adventure activities around the world. So, it's as if, if an alien comes to the world and explores our Earth, those are some of the feelings when you do some of these adventure activities on our planet. So we worked hard on it for 3 years, decided to shut it down. We weren't able to scale as we desired. I then moved to the US for my master's in CS and an MBA, a joint degree, and decided to continue my career in product management. I'm currently based in the SF Bay Area. Love the outdoors and sports. So for folks listening, if you need a sparring partner in adventures or sports, like hit me up.
For sure. No, like sounds like super interesting. I think there's obviously not a direct career path that you've gone through, like right from experimenting as a founder to going and building these huge products out there. I have like some follow-up questions in just that itself. So for example, like let's say one of the things that I would just love to ask is like, how deep does that problem look like that you're working on right now, which is like the business side messaging system that you're working on right now? Like you said, like there are problems with spam and things like that. Like that would be like one question of mine. And like maybe we can just start with that a little bit. Like if you have to give a context of just a little bit of context around like how deep that problem looks like, what is that problem that you're trying to solve and stuff like that. It sounds pretty interesting. So we'd just love to know.
No, absolutely. So I think business messaging on WhatsApp is a fairly nascent product, right? We launched it only a few years ago. WhatsApp has been here for like 14 years. Business messaging has only been here for like a third of the time, so like 5 years. And India is one of our biggest markets, right? Because of the user base and how popular WhatsApp is there. So what the problem is that we're working on is with how, high ROI or high signal the messaging on WhatsApp is. We want to make sure that, businesses are able to talk to the users at the preferred mode of communication, right? Historically, a lot of this communication has been on email, has been on SMS, has been on chat websites or web apps. But what is ubiquitous is now WhatsApp as a democratized channel of communication, right? Across demographics, across geographies.
Correct.
So I think we're seeing a lot of demand where, both users and businesses are finding value in, doing commerce over conversations as such, right? It's
absolutely.
It's highly relevant, highly timely.
For sure.
And that is the sort of business that we're trying to build on. On WhatsApp. The other side of things, which is where, my sort of focus is how do we make sure that we're scaling it, but still ensuring the user experience is good, right? On WhatsApp, if you have 10 friends, half of them are your friends, and then suddenly you start receiving a lot of like business messages. To make sure we scale that experience while keeping WhatsApp still very high signal and personable.
Correct. No, absolutely. I think this one of the behaviors that I have seen in India, for example, if you even have, like, forget about even going for business in WhatsApp or anything like that, you can actually use your, like, I've seen like people using like personal WhatsApp, their numbers and stuff to actually do like businesses on top of, WhatsApp itself, which would be like large enough and a signal towards WhatsApp that, hey, there's like a lot of people actually running business even without thinking about scale over there. Is it like, does the same behavior in India, like I've just seen it closely over here. Because you're behind the scenes, do you have seen like same sort of behavior in any part of the other part of the world? Like, what are those demographic sort of looks like? Just a sort of curiosity question that I had.
No, it is very, very similar, and for the same reasons, right? Like, because the app is so ubiquitous and so simple to use. Like one of our principles as an app is like, we want it to be simple, we want it to be reliable, and we want it to be private, right? And it stood by them through the times of, crisis that we've seen over the last few years in communication.
Absolutely.
And it holds true across geographies, right? So we see a lot of this in Latin America. We see a lot of this in the Middle East, in Europe, right? So it's picking up across different geographies. And the reasons being that businesses and users find a lot of value in communicating over WhatsApp. So premise holds true across.
So but just going to that one thing is the behavior sort of same, like where they would start with a normal thing, and then once they see like, okay, there's a scale, they move towards finding a path. All right, they actually you can actually do 100 more things on just WhatsApp when it comes to selling. Like, for example, I've seen like there is my sort of friend of mine who's thinking to sell sort of cakes, and there are like so there's a card system as well which was introduced within this like last 2 years or something, where in WhatsApp itself you can create your own sort of what do you call, like, catalogs and stuff. Like, so like, does that behavior is very similar to that, or just probably hope that sounds like the question is clear.
No, I understand. I think so we have a version of our app which is meant for small and medium businesses. We call it the SMB app, which is essentially a consumer sort of looking app, but has some of the special features for businesses. Add catalogs, to add pricing, to like segment customer lists, right? And it is meant for these small mom and pop shops who like range, from a single solo entrepreneur doing something like different. To a few tens or hundreds of people trying to ramp up or scale their entrepreneur business. That is a big segment of our user base. These small medium businesses who want to use WhatsApp business.
Yeah.
So that's one section, and the other section, which are like larger enterprises who want to like send hundreds of thousands of millions of messages at the same that they do on email or SMS, they use our APIs. So WhatsApp also has APIs for these enterprises. Those are like the two segments of our behavior that we tap into.
Got it. No, I was just coming to on that point itself where, obviously this is like the B2B side of WhatsApp, where and I was about to ask, like, what does enterprise users look like and what does these SMB guys looks like. So what does these scale in nature look like, if you have to like summarize a little bit about, okay, these are like the bigger ones, whereas these are like the smaller ones.
Yeah. So I think a good way to say it could be like the analogy you just mentioned. So if there is a person who wants to like start their cake selling business, they would likely use the SMB app because it's free to use. You have some of these features, like catalogs, etc. And you can just download the app and get started today. Then there are these large conglomerates or large like businesses that you will see or know around you. I don't want to like mention direct client names here, but you will see some of the businesses around you which you know about. So these are large businesses, large corporates who want to scale their communication with their users across different channels. And WhatsApp is a very high signal channel because people actually read and find even those messages. And we built our integrity systems in such a way that we curb spam and we curb like low quality messaging fairly quickly. Unlike a lot of other platforms. So I think that gives us a lot of like confidence in businesses being able to find value in this.
For sure. And like, since you have this, you have a background that comes from B2B, where we say like, Twilio, like the businesses become like so much difference between going for a B2C company versus, the B2B company. First of all, I would just love to learn, like, what do you look at it as a difference as a PM when you work, let's say, in a B2C product versus in a B2B product? That would like the first question. And I know that even in WhatsApp, you are on the business side, like, but just wanted to understand, because there you are sort of building it from billions, right? The user base is so large, whereas in Twilio or B2B case, you have customers, they can be large enough, but there's still a limit to it. So yeah, I mean, this is like on a high level what the difference look like, but in your case, what do you think is the biggest difference between when we go to a B2C app versus a B2B app? And in your case, what do you have seen that difference?
That's a good question, Arnav. I think the big differences I would say is just expectations of like how a product works and what customers want. When it's a B2B, in the B2B space, usually because these are large enterprises, they have very specific requests in how they want the product to evolve. And that can be very custom as well, right? So like one customer will have a very specific set of requests as opposed to another set of customers. And it becomes very important to like understand who is the customer base that we're catering to first, right? Like who is the focus of our product, who will drive that product forward. And sometimes it's a very hard decision, right? Like we know this customer is willing to pay us and use our product, but we're not able to serve them best because we deliberately prioritize.
Correct. The vision of the product at that point of time.
Yeah. And I think that's super important, right? One of the, I keep going back to this, but like, it's super important to have principles to like take such decisions, right? The principles like ruthlessly prioritize. It's as long as you're able to defend that decision and it's made with the right intentions, it is really fine to not cater to all sets of users, right? So that was sort of my experience in the B2B industry. When I shifted over to like WhatsApp, you're right. My role, because it's in business messaging, we cater to both sets of customers. Like one set of customers, businesses who we want to like come on the platform and scale. Other sets of customers are our users who we want to make sure that they receive high value, expected sort of messages. And that is an interesting dichotomy. And I think that's where WhatsApp is so unique, where unlike some other platforms, we haven't just, taken one side of the story and just, went with it. We're putting this needle of how do we make sure we scale business messaging, but scale it sustainably so that, users actually value and get messages which they find, they expected and valued. So they derive value from it. But I think that the biggest difference would probably be the scale. The scale of WhatsApp and the scale at which Meta's apps operate is just unfathomable. Right? It's just massive, like the biggest thing in the world. So WhatsApp is like the biggest messaging app in the world. And with that, with that comes a lot of responsibility. Right? I can't just turn off and say, no, I'm not going to like this today, because if I don't do it, like billions of users would get impacted. So just that scale and the responsibility is very different in a lot of B2C startups.
No, absolutely. I think it was just because I come from a SaaS background, I run this SaaS product called Olvy. I was just going to ask you, like, does those enterprise in like the B2B side of WhatsApp where you are operating on, does those things also comes in, which is like custom stuff or something like that? Or it is obviously you need to solve it more universally, like this problem needs to get solved very universally. But does that happen on the SaaS side of WhatsApp is what I'm trying to.
Yeah, to some extent it does. To some extent it does, mainly because it's so nascent. It's so nascent. We do a lot of pilots, we do a lot of like initial testing to like figure out how are things panning out, right? And some of those partners are much more agile and much more collaborative to work with than others. But usually, by sort of attrition, it kind of makes sense that people who are most invested are the ones that we focus on, and those are the ones that drive the product forward as well.
Got it. So I think at the end of the day, I think B2B sort of works in terms of, obviously you need to be very tacked towards, like, okay, this is what our vision is. Can I find those similar kind of users, basically sort of also thinks like this is how the problem needs to be solved, sort of build with them. It's like the primary thing that what I'm sort of taking out of this. I think also the scale is too huge. You just don't really look at, okay, this is how the business is going to achieve what their goals are. But then again, at the end of the day, it is on the consumer platform, right? So the consumer is at the end of the day interacting on the platform that you've already built, right? And then sort of on WhatsApp side, I think there will be a lot of intersection between the B2B side and the B2C side. Is what
exactly.
This is how the world looks like. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And
all right.
As a platform, I think it's our responsibility to facilitate that discussion in the best possible way. So keeping both users' interests in mind is paramount for us.
Right. No, I think this is a large cycle of like the product that you look at, right from the user experience that comes for the consumer side to B2B to achieve the primary thing that they were here for. Right. So, but I think just how large this life looks like in terms of, when you go back and build a product like WhatsApp, what does the typical day look like for you? Like I mean, we already had a discussion before this call about, there would be things that might be burning and stuff like that. And there's like so many stuff that is going on. Just if you have to just talk it loud, like how does the typical day of, Ankit looks like when he's a WhatsApp product manager?
I think if I take a step back and look at my day, obviously it varies quite a bit depending on what time of the year, what stage of the product they're at, etc. Right. But I would classify broadly into 3 buckets. So one would be strategic direction. That's always, at the back of my mind. And this involves basically thinking about questions like, what is the North Star of the product and the team? What problems do we want to solve? Where are we currently against, goals that we defined earlier? And like, how do we bridge the gaps? And most importantly, what are our users saying, right? Like, what are our customers, our businesses saying about the product? A big part of like a product manager's day is like coherently framing that narrative. So, the core cross-functional team. So like, the product manager, the engineering team, the design team, the data team, the marketing teams, right? The cross-functional teams and the org can sort of envision the future and buy into like, what are we solving? Why are we solving this? Right. And the more senior you get in your role, I think the more time spent in this bucket, right? Like defining the charter for your team and making sure everyone is aligned and like going in the same direction. So that's like one broad bucket, and it sort of peaks during certain times of the month, certain times of the year as things change, as we do road mapping, etc. Right? But that is probably the more important bit, the more senior you get. The other bucket would be like just day-to-day execution, right? So this is the nuts and the bolts, how the sausage is made. Involves writing detailed product requirements about the problem, collaborating with these cross-functional teams to like brainstorm, share how we are going to solve it, the impact it will have, and how we'll measure success, right? Like all of them.
Absolutely.
And we spoke about this briefly earlier, but like there are always a lot more things to do than the team has capacity for. So prioritizing ruthlessly to focus on the most impactful problems.
Sure.
Right. So like day-to-day execution of this, and at for at WhatsApp scale, there are ways fires, escalations, stuff we need to like it comes in between your days. Those are important things. Having good processes and again a mindset to understand, take a step back. What is most important? How do I protect my team from trash? Right, and make sure that they're able to execute on our longer term plans while taking care of these fires is something I deal with day to day. And the last part of this would be just be like focusing on the team and the organization, right? Like how do we make sure we're looking after the team, contributing towards the company? This involves like hiring people, interviews, helping the team grow, bringing people together in all hands, ensuring we build like an open, transparent, equitable workplace.
Correct.
And I love Mark Zuckerberg's quote on this, but it is very true here that, how do we make sure that we enable people to do the best work of their careers is super important at Meta, and I've really enjoyed that stuff here.
Right. No, absolutely. I think with that last part is like as PM, because you are so integrated inside the company. And I think even around the world, people sort of look at, okay, what Meta is doing, what's happening over there and stuff like that. What do you think is the bigger vision at Meta right in now that the company sort of, moving towards, or like in general, what do you think about it? Like, being part of the, very integrated towards the team. Like, what do you think is the bigger vision that is going on right now inside Meta?
Yeah, I think the recent times have been very interesting. But what I really value and find fascinating is how focused everyone is here, and that has at least stayed true throughout the years at Meta.
Sure.
I think just the openness, the transparency they provide everyone around. Everyone has the the power to voice themselves, the power to express themselves, and everyone respects that. And that has played a huge role in how successful some of the company's work has been so far.
Right.
Like some of the biggest apps in the world, used by the most number of people, loved by most number of people, are Meta apps. And it can't be a coincidence. So the culture, the people that work here, and the way the company builds that internal transparency, the motivation to like come in and do the best work. Has been fascinating for me to learn over the last year that I've been here.
I think that is like so super important to keep innovating. I think that's like the best culture that you can have as the product builders, as we say, right? Like we think and then sort of also go and execute. So that sort of leverage we need to sort of keep innovating in some other way, right? So I think this totally makes sense. Just a question on, like, for example, you started as an analyst and then moved towards product management, but then in between you had a career into building a company as well. So just wanted to understand, like, let's say from investment banking to product manager, it's like two different stuff, if I could say. in terms of even the skill set and the way you look at the problem. Like there, it is a little different versus in product build, it will be like totally different. Now, when you were an analyst versus in between, you were sort of building a company, then you moved into the product management. And by default, when you're building a company, you sort of need to have a product sense, or you start building product and stuff. Was that the part of one of the reasons why you moved towards product management, or there's a different journey altogether? This is more of an assumption that I just thought of. Maybe I'll just connect the dots just to see like, okay, maybe this would have happened.
Yeah, that's probably spot on.
Okay.
When I began working on my startup, was I think the first foray into product management.
Right.
Of course, at that time, I didn't know about it as a PM role, but it had all the same traits, right? Like identify a problem we thought is important enough, big enough to solve, understanding what our users wanted but couldn't get anywhere else, identifying who our users were in the first place, right? Actually trying to serve those users, and scale, leveraging technology.
Right.
So that was, and the reason like I was bit by the entrepreneurship bug was like, even growing up, I always loved tinkering around. So I loved just, opening stuff up, seeing how it works, learning about, both historical backgrounds of like how or why things are the way they are in our culture, but also more specifically about technology and like, learning to like build computer games. Like I was always hooked by that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So like 2 years in my investment banking job, it was 2015, and like a lot of people around me were starting up in India. It was like the OG, startup.
The 500 startup sort of vibe that was going around there.
And I was lucky enough to be around people who were smart enough, like motivated enough to start up, like, be successful. And that, helped me take the plunge. And of course it helped that, I was 23, 24 at that time, nothing to lose. Didn't have dependents or like families or worries that, can typically come when you're like, whatever, older. So, and through that experience, like, I realized that I just, continued my love for building things, and the thrill of going from just an idea in our heads to actually real people paying to use our product was just matched, right? And there was no going back after that.
Correct. And like, if you could share, building a startup, when you were building the startup, and why did you stop? Like, what was that point where you were like, okay, enough of this, probably, and then probably start into, the next journey of your life?
Yeah, I won't say it was, suddenly just a single point of time.
It would be like a learning that you knew that this is happening. Then eventually you understood and like, okay, this is the time that you should. That's just that I'm looking for. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So I think, it's perhaps the last of the 3 years that we were working on the startup. The nature of our like startup. So we were building a marketplace for adventure travel, right? We were based in India, which was just a coincidence, but we had customers all over the world. And I think intuitively, if you think about it, like Indians do not do as much adventure activities as like some other like geographies. Right? It's probably picking up, but probably also has to do with like resources in the country, or like education, or understanding of like what it entails.
For sure.
So what we very quickly realized was our customer acquisition costs were like skyrocketing. And people only do such activities. So like the kind of activities were Kilimanjaro hike, or like going scuba diving in Bali, or going on a trip in Peru. These are not activities which people do every day or every month. They'll probably do it once or twice a year if they're really adventurous.
Correct.
Right. And it became very hard for us to gain customer loyalty. We had to spend a lot of money on like our organic search, building a brand, customer acquisitions. And we just realized that if you wanted to scale this business, we had to think very differently, than typical funding. And we experimented quite a bit in that last year to like figure out if we can crack this problem. Because we could have made it into a lifestyle business, small sort of adventure place where we help people discover and book with the trusted operators, maybe operate some of these ourselves. But we wanted to build this at a much larger scale, right? And as soon as we realized we weren't able to do that, I think that was the point where we were like, no, this is not what we envisioned. So do we really want to stick with this, or do we want to do something else?
Got it. No, I think you just said it so right. Like it's basically the behavior wasn't existing where you were trying to scale, like the geography, as I said, like Indians would see these things more touristy, like when they plan this like once in a year, that they're like, okay, let's just go to Himalayas or whatever, like at those North Indian region, or the other side, and then they think like, okay, hiking and stuff like that. But and in US and stuff, I think that is like a thing that they usually do over the weekends or something like that, just to go in treks and stuff like that. And like that totally makes sense. And like I think from now, like from the next part of this session, I would just love to go a little quicker stuff on some of the personal things of yours. Like, for example, what is that one thing that you love about your job? Like, if you have to just quickly summarize that.
I think it has to be seeing people using and loving the product.
Okay.
That gives a lot of purpose to the work, because one can tangibly see the real world impact of the work, right? Like working at companies like Twilio, now WhatsApp, used by millions, even billions around the world. The impact one will have is remarkable, and that motivates me quite a bit.
For sure. I think that's the most lovely part of it. It's like you just build something and someone is using it for sure. And like, what are some of the cool things that you feel like it's happening around you, and you're very fascinated about it? Like, okay, this seems to be like something very interesting, and I would love to probably tap in over there. What's that one thing that you are noticing?
I think I love that working at WhatsApp, especially in like aspects of integrity, is very cool. It's not something everyone thinks about. Like, my job is to protect users from low quality messaging, spam on WhatsApp, as we scale our messaging business on WhatsApp, right? And this impacts millions of users every day. And I feel privileged and a big sense of responsibility to ensure that we do it the right way, right? And the cool part is that my friends, my parents, acquaintances all rely on me and my team doing a great job so that they can enjoy the great WhatsApp experience that becomes so useful.
For sure. Does this happen to you that, hey, and I get like, can you just get this feature or something like that from your friends or something?
Yeah, it happens all the time. Right? Obviously, that's not how it works. But I think the opposite side is also true, where they keep forwarding me messages. Oh, I received this spam message. What are you doing? You're not doing the job right. They keep poking me on it. Which I appreciate it. All in good.
Yeah, that's like first-hand user research. You just kept it so close to yourself.
Super valuable, right? It can't really happen in any other product. I feel fairly privileged. WhatsApp gives me that flexibility.
For sure. And like, how does the decision making basically works? Like, let's say, if you have to just take us through a little bit of process around with this, how we prioritize some of the problems that comes in, because that is like the biggest thing that you've also like repeatedly said, that one of the biggest part is actually to ruthlessly prioritize. But how does that process sort of looks like? Are there any frameworks that you guys sort of go back to, or I'm pretty sure you have your own customized way to look at those problems because the context of the business changes and stuff like that. Maybe a little bit behind the scenes of what does the process looks like inside WhatsApp, particularly the things that you're working on.
Yeah, I think generally there are plenty of good frameworks, for prioritization, decision making, and like folks can find a lot of them online now. A lot of people talking about them. And WhatsApp, I find interesting that there's a lot of focus on principled decision making, right? So like, how do we think about the problem in a first principles way? What are some principles that everyone can align on before we start, solving the problem? Because then it gives us guardrails on like, how do we think about the different solutions, and what are the 4 or 5 things that are not negotiable, right? Like, those are the things we want to focus on as we think about the solutions. And that is super interesting, right? Like it moves away from like rigid frameworks and brings into focus, that product sense, that focus on the user, the focus on, okay, these are the 4 or 5 things we know we want to like have in our product. And that once people are aligned on that, it becomes very easy to like align on the solutions, because then people know, okay, what are we optimizing for? Right. And then the framework could be, how do we, visually reflect that so it's easy to digest, it's easy to understand for someone who does not have as much context. For example, organization leader, decision making, do not have as much day-to-day context as the working team. So making it presented in a way that's easily digestible, and people can take quick decisions in such a fast-moving company is super critical.
Right. Yeah, I think like buy-ins and stuff like that is basically like these frameworks is nothing but just giving like path to just sort of like see it like a map or something like that, and then sort of make the data more presentable, just so that you can just get like buy-ins from different stakeholders and stuff like that.
Correct. A lot of time you're just sharing your thinking, right? Like how did you come to a decision?
Exactly.
And people, if people align with those principles, it becomes fairly easy to get by.
For sure. And like as humans, and even in a work, right? What happens is, one of the things that we're like, when we like, obviously when you were young, you started up a company. Now you learned and seen through like different companies and jumped over there, and now you're into like bigger problems. There are like different kind of companies that you worked at. What do you think is the difference between Ankit today versus when he was running a company? What is the bigger, like, what do you think is the biggest sort of learning that you feel like, you just got in here in the current state? And if you could just share it with us as well.
Yeah. That's a deep question. I think one of the differences is just understanding what I love to do in my work, the things that I enjoy and gives me energy. This happened even during the startup times, but also now at some of these big tech companies, is like your productivity is very much determined by how motivated, how energetic, and how much you enjoy what you're working on. Right. So I think figuring that out through these years has helped me quite a bit in staying grounded, ensuring that, when I look for those opportunities, I'm very deliberate about choosing them, making sure that I do not like get into the hype cycle around some of these things that might be just happening at that time, but ground myself more in, okay, reflecting what I've done in the past, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what do I enjoy the most. I think that's been one major thing I've seen over the years. There are also a few things. So that's one thing that's different. There are also a few things that remain the same, right? And there's just the drive to make sure that I'm working on the best possible, the best thing, the most impactful thing. Making sure that I give my best every day at work to justify people who've hired me, my team's working hard alongside, leading by example. Those things have remained the same.
Right. The fundamentals are still there, and then on top of it, you just keep learning with it. Totally makes sense. And like, if you don't mind, like if you can just tell us like a little bit about, there's one mistake that you might have done in the past, let's say in this product building, and you would love to just share, like, okay, this is what happened at that point of time, but then this is how we also resolved. So maybe someone else, does not repeat it or anything like that. Like if there is any incident that has happened or anything that you feel like, this was like the biggest thing that I learned from that mistake that I did.
Got it. Let's see. I think one of the things has just been about having hard conversations at work. Too many people, including myself, shied away from having these hard conversations. And an example could be, you giving feedback to someone who's like working on an important project. Their thinking does not align with your thinking. They're going in a different direction, or it could be like a little more like, we're working on some overlapping stuff. They're like scope issues that are coming up between you and the other team. So. And I mean, it's only valid. Like, who wants to confront a colleague, give them sincere empathetic feedback and risk the
Yeah.
relationship, right?
Yeah.
But it's a skill that needs practice and a lot of effort.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
outcomes can be exponentially fantastic. Like it saves you so much heartburn, anxiety.
Yeah.
And especially as you like become senior in your org, it's the most important skill that will increase your leverage manifold, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I still have to be very deliberate about, and it's still very hard for me. But you'll see some of these, leaders at Meta, Ami Vora, who is the ex-product at WhatsApp, she's talking a lot about this. Sheryl Sandberg has spoken a lot about this, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that I would urge everyone else to also think about. I think it improves relationships, it improves outcomes for the users, and it improves overall the product when you have these hard conversations rather than shy away from.
No, true. I think this is so relatable. This is exactly what I'm going through right now, where I feel like I'm just giving like too much feedback, and people who are building might actually get irritated about it, or can be the case, for sure can be the case. I think one of the things that eventually a person needs to learn, even if you are having that hard talk, is to how to talk about it, right? How do you convey, maybe, just a little bit, you need to probably step back and see like a little bit of empathy towards that, like why he might be thinking like this, or why she might be like thinking like this. Stuff like that is something that has sort of helped me, but I am literally in this situation. And thanks for speaking that. I'm just so glad about, I actually asked this question and I can relate, like, okay, there's another person also going through this. Yeah, I think this sounds amazing. And like in general, like where do you get like inspiration from, right? Like let's say today you are going to solve a problem, and and obviously you do a lot of research and things like that. There would be a method of your own chaos, but there would be something that you look at every day and be like, this is like the primary source of inspiration for me. Is it something like that? Does that exist for you, or just question over there? Yeah.
I think I'm taking the question of like what keeps me going at work.
Probably yes, for sure. I think that's what it is.
I think I've realized that I love benchmarking myself, like getting wins under the belt. It could be small wins, as shipping something, fixing a bug, etc. Or it could be larger things like changing the experience of the product, or that multi-half project that we're working on, the feature that we're working on, it's now finally in the hands of users. They're giving us great feedback. We are iterating on stuff. So just those wins that keep you going, keeps you fueled for like the next thing is, I think, super crucial for me. And I've realized that if you're able to share that, socialize that with the teams, with our leaders, with our adjacent partners, I think that keeps them motivated as well. So I think that's something I found out about myself, and I would urge people listening to also think like, what is the next win you could get? What is the next small, big win you can think and work towards? Because that will keep you motivated. And okay, how do I make progress towards that? Gives you the boost once that is done to re-energize and go for the next one.
Yeah. And I think this also goes to the team as well, where you not only just address that you actually want something, because sometimes you're just working so much that you don't even go and recognize that there was an actual win over there. We didn't even look at it, right? And then actually go and celebrate this as well. I think that is a very culture thing that needs to come in an individual level and also on a company wide as well. I think this is a fantastic thing that you just said.
Exactly.
So yeah. All right. So one last question that I have is, what is that one thing that you would recommend someone who is starting out in, product management, or someone is sort of building a product right now? What's that one thing that you would love to, give back to them as that one advice as a PM?
Yeah, I think because the PM role can vary so much, it is very important for you to understand what part of product management excites you. The product manager at WhatsApp is very different than a product manager at Facebook, right? Sure. So like knowing what is the kind of products you like building, what is those aspects of product management you'd enjoy. And this can come from like talking to people who are a few years ahead of you and are more experienced. It could be attending some of these, events or talks that a lot of leaders give to understand their experiences. But a lot of it is just, jumping in and doing it yourself. Like learning on the job is very real for a product manager because it keeps changing as you change your jobs, change your roles, become more senior. So I think just learning what you want is very important. The other part, which I think I'm always pleasantly surprised by, is how much being high agency can leverage you as a person. Right. So like perseverance, figuring out creative ways to get stuff done. Especially when things are stuck. There'll be a lot of time you feel stuck in a PM job. But just showing up on those hardest days goes such a long way, right? It compounds your talent, it compounds your skills exponentially. I've seen that with myself, right? Throughout my career, that being high agency is one of the only things that separate good from the great.
For sure.
That'd be one major call out.
Yeah. I think high agency is like super important to even pump up your team as well. Like where if you are into that verge of like going and nailing things, it also motivates the people around you as well. It's not just your growth, it is also a byproduct that you're also giving it to other people as well.
Yes. And it's infectious, right? Like you see high agency people around you and it motivates you so much. It's a one thing that you can give your team without them asking for it.
Right. Yeah, I think this is like super important, especially in terms of PMs, because you're literally just making things out of thin air. Right? Sometimes
converting ideas into actual paying products.
Exactly. Yeah, sounds good. Thanks for joining, Ankit. I think this was amazing. It is, I think I have just hope this also helped you to retrospect a little bit. And yeah, any last words that you would love to add? And one thing that I would love to ask is like, what do you think about this podcast? Did you also, the same thing, like, did you got to retrospect your journey as well? Like just
this was fantastic. Like thanks for having me again. It's interesting, like you don't think about these things every day, but when you're talking to someone and reflecting on it on the spot, like things flash by and you learn every time I have this kind of conversation, I understand a little bit more about myself and my journey, which is always very useful. So thank you.
Yeah, exactly. That's the reason why this is called Product Humans, because we legit want to understand, people behind those roles is like super important for us. And that's what we are celebrating in this podcast. So thanks again. Thanks for joining and see you soon, man.
Thank you, Arnab.
All right.